Thank you so much, Andrea, for making this happen. I wish we had more time so we could advertise it and we could have gotten more people.
Well, we can always have them back on. This is easy. This is why we have our show. We can always have them back on. We can have them on as many times as we want. Matter of fact, we can just hand over the show and
That's
we can
true.
we can
You
just go.
guys are the professional.
Yeah, oh, it just unmuted. Here, just but be careful when you take it.
And to be there and talk about prison reform. Oh my gosh, wow.
Hmm.
And I hope the riches win the what is it? Is it an Academy Award? Is it the Oscars? Whatever it is.
They were nominated for Academy Award this year. They didn't win, but they were nominated for Academy Award.
Wow, wow, that is something else. They are just so honest. I mean, that movie is just so honest. I don't know if you guys know what we're talking about. Have you heard of the movie Time?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, is it Robert and Fox Rich, the couple
Sybil,
in
Sybil.
Time? I'm sorry.
Sybil and Fox Rich.
Sybil, yeah. And yeah, yeah, they were on Crossroads yesterday because Crossroads airs in Montgomery County, which is where we're at, every Tuesday at 10 a.m. And
Okay.
so we had a chance to hear them on WPFW. Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So it is just an absolute. When we start,
We have already kicked off. Just to let people know that we are live here on You Be the Judge.
Recording in progress.
I do like to start always on time on You Be the Judge. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. here live in front of your station. And if you ever have any questions or comments, you can always put it in the chat box. You can put it in all your live feeds. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. It's on Apple, all your podcast channels. You Be the Judge. This is show 139. Not You Be the, we've gotten over several hundred shows, but this is a whole new year. So welcome to You Be the Judge. I'm super excited to have all our guests that comes on throughout the year. We like to talk about information, understanding, and hopefully that brings you to an action. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm Dr. Paul Dyer, and then we have two other co-hosts. This is Judge Claudia Barber and Marlin Pierre, running for Circuit Court Judge of Montgomery County in Maryland. So I do like to say that, and I do like to have a plug for my dear friend Marlin Pierre, who's running for judge. Send money. That's as easy as you can do. Send money. Remember, this is not a finance thing where we have public financing. So you have to support, and we have to tear down the good old boys network in the circuit courts and in the judicial system, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So, Marilyn, how was your week?
Oh, my week was wonderful. I loved the new year. And so far, it's been great. I took my booster shot today. I did not have to make an appointment. I did not have to wait online. So, yay. So, I'm all caught up now. My arm is hurting a little bit, but I think I'll get over it.
Well,
so how has your year been so far?
Well, we just started. We had a show last week, but I was talking off air about segregation, social justice, and it brought me to the 14th Amendment. And since I have some great esteemed colleagues on this, that's attorneys, the 14th Amendment was supposed to get rid of or bring equality. Was it or was it not, Marilyn?
Well, it's part of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Well, the 13th we know freed slaves, except for I'm sorry. It keeps people from being held in involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime.
Correct.
And there's been a movement to have that part, to have the 13th Amendment amended to remove that exception, which I hope everybody here supports that movement because
I actually don't think a lot of people know about the movement. I actually don't know what, Marilyn, I don't think a lot of people dig into different legal issues and laws that is so subjective and it holds so many people back. And that's why I think the African American community, the Black community, the Black and Brown community always get held on the out because they don't know the legal issues. They don't know what's coming up on the courts, what's getting the bills that are being passed, or bills that should be passed. We still haven't passed the voting rights. And how many people should be thinking about we're still fighting for voting rights?
Mhm.
That's insane. It's an insane
insane.
thought process. But we're still fighting for voting rights. So the 14th Amendment has been actually shredded. Then, if we're still fighting for voting rights, then how's the 14th Amendment was it ever really upheld?
Yeah, I think that we need to hold the so-called leaders accountable for what they promised to do. And I'm tired of the excuse, oh, things aren't exactly the way we thought it would be. It's not as easy as we thought it would be. Then why did you want the position? So kick out whoever needs to be kicked out and bring in whoever needs to be brought in order for us to get the results that we need. Because you're right. At this point, we should not be fighting, and not only fighting for those rights, but actually going backwards in terms of those rights. When you hear that in Georgia, people who are standing in line for 4 to 5 hours to vote can't even have, a bottle of water from somebody else given to them. It's just unbelievable.
So that goes back to when they.
And then I always wonder, how did they answer nature's call? Did they have to go back on the line again? It's
Are they allowed back in their spot? Isn't that a question?
Okay. Yeah, I don't even know.
So
Today, this is Teresa Lee. I just want to say we need to look at how they're using the filibuster as well, not to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and how they've used the filibuster all through history to maintain the status quo. If they get rid of the filibuster before the majority turns back to Republican, I think there's a chance. And I know that they are really threatening to pass a law against the filibuster as well.
Teresa, thank you for your comment. Do you think the filibuster can turn around and bite us?
Probably not, because as we can see, when we have the majority Democrat, we have both houses as well as the presidency, and still we can't come together to pass really laws that will benefit the people.
So,
so I'm not sure that the filibuster, I'm just saying that they're using that as an excuse to move forward. I'm not sure even after they do that, if that will be enough, because you still have people who are white supremacists on both sides of the aisle.
I agree. And I don't think having the Democrats having the majority, because a lot of Democrats just not good people, right? This is plain and simple. They're not doing what they said they were going to do. So
I think it's some of lack of leadership, and I think some of there's not the will to do it. They say that they want to do it, but they just actually don't have the will to do it because they don't want to. Well, I'm not sure how many people really want a bunch of people voting, no matter how much they talk about it. Because if you're in leadership, you only want certain people to show up at the polls, because if everybody actually shows up at the polls, they might vote you out. Oh gosh, what's his name? The former mayor of Bloomberg. Yeah, Bloomberg talked about that. He said that if everybody who is eligible to vote in Texas actually voted, probably Texas would be represented by a bunch of Democrats instead of a bunch of Republicans who are now represented. And so, but anyway, we have some guests here.
We do.
And I really think that we should honor them and hand the reins over to them so that way they could get a chance to talk about the topic that they're here to talk about.
Which is prison reform.
Prison reform, exactly, a very, very important topic. And yes, it deals with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, but we will put that aside for now, and we will just let them have the floor. So I don't know if Mr. and Mrs. Brown, if you want to start, or if Ms. Jacobs wants to start.
Let's have Miss Jacobs introduce our guest. That we'll have a special introduction by Miss Jacobs. So please, Miss Jacobs, introduce our guest because we're all super excited. I know I am. So I know Mandrea is super excited. So we'll have her introduce our guest. Go ahead, Mandrea. It's a mute thing. You got to do the mute. You got to unlock the mute. We've been doing Zoom for 2 years going.
Oh boy, oh boy.
There it is.
Don't charge it to my heart. Don't charge it to my heart. Hey, listen, I want to first, I got to give honor to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who's the head of my life. And I want to thank God for Brother Roach Brown and Mertine Brown. God put him in my spirit to come on the show because he's the one and only. If there's another, it's a phony. And that's just my thing. But I just thank God for Brother Roach. I don't have his bio, but I know that he has personally been a forerunner and a voice to so many people in the DMV area to talk about prison reform and provide so many other a wealth of resources to people coming in and out of the prison system and people who've been treated unjustly. And I don't even think he even know how many people he's really reaching. You're touching so many people, brother. People you probably would never even know, that you and your wife have touched. So I just thought it would just be such an honor to have you here with your wealth of information and your experience. And I just want to yield to you in that way and thank God for you. So
Thank you.
there he is,
Thank you.
Roach Brown.
Hello, how you doing?
Very well,
we're doing
sir.
well, and it's such an honor to have both of you here.
It's our pleasure. It goes both ways. It's a pleasure and an honor because it's a joy just being alive. It's inspiring to see so many people concerned about our brothers and sisters and how we're being treated. And we started off mentioning about the 14th Amendment, which gave us equal rights and citizenship to all Afro-Americans. And we talk about mass incarceration or the re-entry. And it seems like the two don't fit. Because if we were guaranteed the right to be treated as equals, then a lot of us wouldn't be in prison because the laws are unequal, it's unjust. And we're supposed to be treated the same way as all citizens. So we've been going through a thing about this. And it really warms our heart to have people sitting there talking about brothers and sisters who've been taken from us. Sure, they might have broke the law, whatever. Punish, but don't over punish. Don't overkill. And when you do that, a lot of little kids are being left alone without their mommies and daddies. And we're seeing all these killings. All this is connected. Because the kids are so mad, angry, and bitter. They don't care about us, you, or nobody, because then nobody care about them. That's how they some of them interpret it. This thing is all interconnected, and we need to have more people like you and more programs like this. Because, hey, 70% of all Black males in America have a criminal record or been in prison, or been arrested or stopped by the police.
70%?
7 out of 10.
Wow.
7 out of 10. And these figures are frightening. Black suicide is on the increase inside of institutions. Young Black kids are committing more and more suicide because there's no hope. There's no tomorrow. When you take away mommy and daddy, when I came through, we got locked up. You may did 3 years, 2 years, 4 years. You can come back out and you can be in your kid's life. Then you may get locked up again a few years later. But you had moments that you were in his life or in the kid. Now, when you lock up a parent, they never see their mother or father again. It was 15, 20, 30 years. We just had a friend come out there 50 years. And even staying with his family, and his son took offense with him. And where you been at all my life? He's been in jail for 50 years. You don't know nothing about parenting, fatherhood, nothing how do you even communicate with his son, because he's been communicating with another language and another mentality. So it's hard for him to relate. And he had to leave out the house
Yeah, and I think you had a show where you talked about how it was such a shock to him when he put his hand under the faucet and the water came out, and and he's using the cell phone and going, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?"
Yeah.
Because it's a different world that he was living in.
Well, when our guest, Mr. Brown, mentioned about the high incarceration, about 70% of Black men, that is not shocking to me, because I had a conversation with a coworker who was a judge, and he still is a judge, and he just reiterated to me on one occasion. He says, it's really hard to find a Black man around here without a record. Most Black men have records. And it's astonishing that that statistic is real, but it has nothing to do necessarily with the fact that it's that way because Black men only are criminals. And it has more to do with a very twisted and jaded criminal justice system that targets, communities, vastly people of color in communities. And it's all about the policing. It's all about, the arrests. It's all about, the fact that the arrests are documented and there's a record made. You see, the reason why also, that explains also the reason why I continue to still not do business with Starbucks. It wasn't so much about the apology. It's the fact that you made an arrest record. That's where I am, out of foolishness. And then on top of that, before this whole incident went down, you had a police chief saying that the arrest was appropriate. See, that's my fallout. That's a big fallout for me. But with the Starbucks, the Philly Starbucks arrest several years ago and the boycotting of them.
So Claudia Barber, Judge Barber, thank you. And my other co-hosts, let everybody know that we're here every Wednesday, and Judge Claudia Barber's of our other co-hosts, Marlin, Pierre, and myself, Dr. Paul Dyer. Prior to you coming on, we talked about voting. Sheriff gets voted in, and we still don't have enough Black people voting. Just like Maryland, who said if all the Black people or the Democrats voted in Texas, Texas would be a Democratic state. But besides the fact, I don't think the 14th Amendment was ever upheld or was secure, because they kicked it back to the states. And when they kicked it back to the states, that allowed the courts to imprison people and then institute them. And then so now we're back into prison issue. Because now... Well,
that's another thing that Mr. Brown brought up in terms of the prison issue. Now, when somebody gets a 50-year sentence, that's just slavery by another name.
Right.
Just stop. Just call it what it is. And, just stop fooling everybody.
So we were never protected.
Yeah. And so there were situations where, and I forgot the state, and I have to, because I'm working on a book, and I have this where a Black male committed the identical same crime as a white male, and there was like a 34-year sentence to the Black male, and this is the same robbery, same background, prior record, identical same prior record. And the white person came back with a sentence of less than 5 years for the same armed robbery. And the Black person came back with the sentence of, now you can try to whitewash that and paint that another way and call, but just stop.
I think in that case, they actually asked the judge why there was such a disparity. And he said, well, I'm not racist, and it's not because of race. The black one just warranted a higher sentence, although he couldn't put his finger as to
He couldn't
why.
put a finger, and I read the rationale statement that came behind that whole scenario, and it just didn't make sense. I mean, you just wanted people to believe an apple is an orange and an orange is an apple. Just so, at some point you throw up your hands and go, none of this makes sense.
I'm going to ask a question, and I don't know if you know the answer. What was the description of both parties? Was the black guy 6 foot something and strong looking? And was the white guy not? Because remember, black men get arrested on perception of a threat. And,
Right.
and because we have more muscular definition, or we're bigger, or whatever have you, we are getting pulled over and perceived a threat, and then it goes into escalation. That may be a factor.
Was it an
it doesn't
riot?
It doesn't just. It doesn't. And that's where you need to get to the root of the problem, which is really the judge. And you need to address these disparities in sentencing. And we should not be afraid to pursue and seek judicial reform. Because, I mean, we have written laws.
You guys want to watch more of the
until
show?
we're blue in
Go
the
over to my
face.
YouTube channel.
And we have passed laws and passed
me on the
legislation.
back end of my show.
And then you sit there and scratch your head and go, isn't there a law against that? And then you sit up there and go, there should be a law against it. Then you find out there is a law against it. People aren't enforcing the law because they don't want to enforce the law. It's just words on paper. All men are created equal. Yeah, the Constitution says that. But are they really? And so it's really a situation where there is a total disregard for the law and the Constitution and equal justice under the law. I've heard that 100 times, if not 1,000 times.
I think that's one of the reasons why I like to educate returning citizens. And in Maryland, they are allowed to vote, but a lot of them don't know that. And a lot of them are afraid to vote because they've heard so many stories about people who have voted and have not voted. They voted in other states by mistake, and they've been held accountable in different ways. All right, so Ms. Jacobs, do you want to chime in? We haven't heard from you in a while, and Mr. and Mrs. Brown as well.
Yeah, I want to say something that, I have a person that I've known for quite a while. As a matter of fact, ever since I was a little girl, and he is still incarcerated. He robbed a bank with 2 other friends, no guns involved. They had handed the teller a paper with a note, and he's doing now 40 years. This is his 40th year. This year make 40 years. He's gone up for parole probably about 6 or 7 times, and they keep turning him down. I've written letters for him. I've tried to advocate for him, and they just won't let up. They got their knee on this brother's neck.
Well, now you're raising another important issue. And see, this has to do with the system. Because first of all, I know bank robberies are federal crimes, and they're all prosecuted in federal courts. So it's very different from state law, where they might have a post-conviction remedy or an opportunity under the Justice Restoration Act that was passed a couple of years ago to revisit sentences. But in federal court, you've got really nasty judges that will throw the book at defendants and not thinking anything of it because they have lifetime appointments. So it's like, who's going to move me? Who cares? The other important thing about federal sentencing is that there are a number of judges on the federal bench that have given draconian, and I do mean draconian sentences. If you go to the website, therobingroom.com, you will see how litigants and lawyers rate judges. And in the federal system, see, they don't care because they have lifetime appointments. So they feel like they're invincible. And you will see people lash out at and use words like draconian sentences. In fact, I just received an email maybe last year or year before last of someone who was caught up in some type of mortgage scam scheme. Now, this again has nothing to do with a killing of anybody or violence, but at the end of the day, his sentence was 200 and some years. And
Well, and I
the
think
judge didn't care.
Well, and I think part of the problem as well is that people are in jail and they're just languishing there. They're not learning anything. They're not being told how to make it once they come outside of the prison.
So I'm gonna ask Mr. Brown a question, because inside the institution, prisoners have so much more information that we don't believe they have. Judges in the United States, you guys who's been locked up for long periods of time, you guys all must rate the judges some kind of way. Is that true or not true when you're inside?
I wouldn't call it a rate on a scale kind of rate. It's a thing of you know what judge you don't want to go in front of and which judge is mean or racist or whatever. What I like to add about this is that this whole thing, man, it hurts. I mean, it really hurts. We just got back from New Orleans about 2-3 hours ago. We went down for our 13th wedding anniversary. While down there, we decided to do our radio show from New Orleans. So we spent a few days going, looking at reentry programs, talking to folk in New Orleans, and we broadcast live from there. And everybody we met, I met about 13 brothers from New Orleans, and 11 had been incarcerated. All of it done decades, man. These guys were all went in as juveniles. And what's being done to our folk down there, and how the judges in these rural counties or whatever, not so many, the mentality of judges in terms of Judge Earl Warren of the Supreme Court, before he passed, he said, you were sent to prison as punishment, not to be punished. And that's been lost, and that thing has been transcended up to the judges when they have that kind of thought that they can send you in prison for the rest of your life. And you know, when you walk into a prison and you see young boys, teenagers, and there's no life in their eyes, they're dead. Their hope has been snatched away from them. They didn't have any hope before they even came to prison. The mother wasn't there, the father wasn't there. You get a book with 4 or 5 white kids' names in the book. And then your books is 6, 8, 10 years older than the other books. So everything you get is rotten, no good, expired, non-existent, malfunctioning. Then they lock these kids up and charge them with crimes and expect us to obey the law when the law is supposed to be protected and provided. And when that thing is abused, and you see young Black boys, not only boys now, the fastest growing prison population of Black women. They're locking up our mommies, our sisters, our wives, grandmothers. You got institutions where the grandmother, the mother, and the granddaughter are all serving life for drugs. They're killing us. I mean, they call it plantation, now it's called incarceration. The names change, but the game is the same. They're rubbing us out, people. We need to come together. We can talk about this and talk about it, but we know it hurts when I see men and women coming out who've been gone 30, 40, 50 years. Their life is over. Then the parole officer tell them, you get 90 days to seek employment. They never had a job in their life. They've been locked up for 50 years. And you get 90 days to find a job. I mean, this kind of stuff, this double dipping, whatever you want to call it, it hurts. It's not right. We all know it's not fair. And like you said at the top of the show, Doc, the 14th Amendment, we supposed all have equal rights. We know damn well ain't none of us got no equal rights. And they'll do the same thing they do to me, they'll do to you. They catch you on you by yourself, one-on-one. It doesn't matter what the Constitution says, who if you know the judge or don't know the judge. If they get you by yourself, brother, I don't care if you got a PhD in legal terminology, we don't stand a chance. The only way we can get together is this way here. Let's organize, let's mobilize. And when I see, I don't know half the people on the screen, but you can bet your last dollar. If they come after you to try to lock you up and get you, we'll do whatever we can to help. And I don't need to know you because we know what you're going to go through, what you're going to face. And if I went through this kind of pain, I don't want to see nobody else go that kind of hurt. So let's unhurt the hurt. Let's get together to unhurt the hurt. Thank you.
I'd like to add to that, if I may. You know, I was in prison facing 20 years to life. And I was blessed to be able to serve 1 to 3 years for an assault with intent to kill. And being able to address this issue from the inside and the outside, and I'm sure Roach can relate to this because we've both been incarcerated. Resources, resources, resources. There was a time back in, I opened 10 outreach centers in the DMV area. And there was a time when we couldn't save everybody, but we were able to plant some great seeds in the lives of our Black women and our Black boys to prevent them from going to jail and provide other opportunities for them. We had the Boys and Girls Club that was very visible. We had a lot of different outreach, nonprofit organizations. We had nonprofit organizations all over the city. I mean, and they were visible. I mean, out there in the street, passing out flyers, grabbing them kids, talking to them, getting in their face, providing services, going inside the homes, making an assessment. I'm not talking about social services going in. I'm talking about we as civilians would go inside of the house and make our assessments. Okay, you got 4 kids, you got 2 boys, you got 3 girls. Okay, this one's has mental illness. This young lady is pregnant, and we would go and we would find them resources, and resources was available, and it made a difference. And then we had role models. We had people we could look up to. I had Dr. Calvin Roloff. That's who I had personally for me. I don't know. I'm sure everybody had that person who was able to help guide them. Also, we had officer friendlies. You know, we had officer friendlies passing out the coloring books. And I'm telling you, that meant the world to me, having an officer friendly, you know. And I just wish that when I was going through my adolescent, you know, my problem, my at-risk youth problem as a youngster, I wish that I had somebody snatch me up. Maybe I wouldn't have experienced all the things I did. However, I was blessed to have a praying grandmother and people who would push me in my back. And I was able to found the Never Say Never ministry and to aid and assist homeless people and at-risk youth and help them with after-school programs and giving out turkeys and food and counseling and support groups to do what I was able to do with the resources that was given to me. So I think that, you know, I don't know if it was Martin Luther King or somebody said, let us not get caught up in the paralysis of the analysis. I mean, just meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. At some point, we got to drop the bomb. And when I say drop the bomb, at some point, we're going to have to make a difference and organize, as Roach was saying, and let's do something.
So we have to organize around specific issues that need to be changed. For example, there should be a push to take all these humongous draconian sentences. Anybody who has a draconian sentence, let's revisit it. Anybody that has a draconian sentence, let's revisit it to find out whether or not there was violence involved or non-violence involved.
Well, here's my question for our Mr. Roach. For as many years as we've been doing this, many years that we just been talking about that this is done purposefully, right? Let's just call it what it is. It's purposefully.
That's true. I'm 100% with you.
Why why hasn't, we know that people have talked to congressmen, senators, and this new president who also signed a bill that put probably 3 million black people in prison. So he knows what he did even when he signed that bill. Why are they not looking at these sentences and trying to reform them? So it's almost like we're kind of going back to a Civil War question. After they're free, what are we going to do with them? Because I think that's what they're afraid of.
But that's a big issue, because it reminds me of a scene in a historical documentary about LBJ and Dr. King. So when Dr. King approaches LBJ and says, "What are you going to do about the voting rights? There are a lot of people in the South that can't vote." He said, "Well, if you don't march about it, ain't nothing going to be done." That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That was his answer. That was his answer.
That's true. Nothing is done. Frederick Douglass said it long, long ago. Power conceives nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. We have the power. All we have to do is do it. We can start with change.org. That's what's on my mind at the moment. I mean, 20 years is enough time for anyone to do. So just a simple.
Again, this is so close to our hearts. We talked about this yesterday on our radio show, and a brother called in from Germany, and he calls in frequently, and he said that you'd be surprised that the people over in Germany are listening to our program, and it blew us away. And we've been getting calls from other countries, and our folk are being treated the same way all over the world. We are being last hired, first five, being beaten and killed by the police. They're locking up our kids. And somebody said, "Oh, we need to focus on a couple of issues." There's some things that we can do to help. You got men and women. The lady in Baltimore just got out, Miss Gwen Levy, did 25 years. She was in her 70s. And they let out on compassion release. And she wasn't where she was supposed to be when they made that phone call. She was in a computer class, and they had forgot the paperwork that she had permission. Anyway, they locked her up. And the community came together and raised some smoke, and they released her. But she's only one. These are Black grandmothers. They're the backbone of our families, our whole community structure. And they being treated like this, and because of our attitudes, our egos, our social standing. I don't like you. A lot of jiggy boogie. A lot of jiggy boogie is keeping us from our oogie woogie.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be cracking a joke, but the bottom line is, please, people, reach out and help somebody. Everybody knows somebody who's been in prison. You got men and women coming out, being locked up 30, 40, 50, 55 years, and they don't know where to go or what to do. And they're lost, and they ours. They belong to us. It could be either one of us there, but for the grace of God, go out.
Well, Mr. Brown, you raise another interesting point when you discuss about the fact that there's hopelessness, because what I see, and I kind of get it. If their attitude is that people don't care,
they don't care.
They don't care about the fact that I was railroaded. Think about the Central Park Five who were put in prison for a crime they didn't commit. And there's hopelessness there, because I can't blame them if their attitude is that nobody cares and that the system didn't work, and this system is so messed up, it would incarcerate somebody who did not commit a crime.
Yes.
Who did not commit a crime.
Judge,
you got too much of that.
I have a story that's just, it reminds me of the hopelessness that you're talking about, Judge Barber and Mr. Brown. All of us actually. I teach martial arts. Most people know I teach a lot of martial arts. I've been doing it for about 100 years, it seems like. And I'm in the Bronx, in the South Bronx. I'm teaching this class, and there everybody's happy that Grandmaster blah 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 is there, and this 10-year-old looks at me and says, I don't think this will ever help me. And I bent down and I kneed down in front of him. And I said, why? Why would you say that? He goes, I'm not going to live to past 25.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I hugged him and I just started crying and bawling. Because when I've heard this said before, I'll hear it. And every time I hear it, I'll cry. But when you have a black boy that'll tell you that he doesn't believe he'll ever live to 25 because of whatever, that's a hopelessness that is being, like Mr. Brown said, it's being snatched away purposely via schools, via education, being on the streets, and it's all over. So we have all these fingers, like Judge Clark Barber says. We got to pick an issue and make a fist and punch a hole in this mess.
There you go.
Because we're done. And speaking of Maryland specifically, if the black flipping people come out to vote, we win. We have more black voters in Maryland than white voters. So if we want to do something, we have to come out and vote on the lower levels. Vote on the legislative level, the delegate level, the sheriff level. We have to vote on all of it, not just this national bullshit, right? We got to vote on the city councilmen, city delegates, and we get so tied up in who's running for president. Man, you better watch your courts.
You better. And you have the opportunity to vote for trial court judges.
Thank you.
So don't even think that this is a lost cause. And I've met voters at the polls who says I don't vote because it's a waste of my time. The system is the system, and it's jacked up, and it's going to stay jacked up. So that's where you have got to educate, and you've got to outreach and do your outreach and let them know that they have options. In fact, they should run themselves. That's just the truth of the matter. Because if you have a situation where you have a purposeful system that's systematically incarcerating people and
not educating them.
Incarcerating.
Yeah, because you remember they pulled that education system out of the prison system. They used to be able to get at least a high school, college. They said, okay, enough of that. That's got to stop. So they did, again, doing things, and they don't allow certain visitors. I was talking to Mondrea today. I've been trying to get into prisons, but since COVID, it's been hard for them to allow me in to talk to my brothers and sisters. Mostly I want to talk to my young men and my black men, my black boys, and let them know that we're here to help them when they get out. But they're stopping that. They're not allowing you in because of quote COVID.
Well, we've got to, again, just as Dr. Dyer mentioned, focus on issues and face it head on. And I agree, we need to start by mobilizing people to vote, because there is way too much, there are too many politicians taking votes for granted. And, once they get our vote, they could care less. You could ask them, to fix A, B, C, and D, and correct police reform and do all this and do all that. They'll sit there and act like, that it can't be done, or they'll be very dismissive about approaching your constituent issue. So everybody should have the same constituent issue to get rid of disparate sentencing. When it comes to incarcerating people, everybody should have a mentality that there should be a conviction integrity unit in every county state's attorney's office, and everybody should have a mentality that police officers who plant evidence, fake evidence, should be held accountable for their behavior.
And the prosecutors.
And the prosecutors
right.
as well.
Wait a minute.
And the prosecutors.
And here's the kicker. We know that there's some prosecutors and police and detectives that have planted evidence. We already know that. It's already come out. 10, 20 years. It's come out. And they're not revisiting the cases. The question is how come?
That's true. Now, there's a Ray Anthony, I think it's Ray Anthony Hinton, that he wrote a book, The Sun Will Shine Again, incarcerated for 30 years for a crime he did not commit. Now, see, there should be a revisiting, you know, there should be a revisiting. Who did this? Now, he admitted that the police officer told him that, you know, this all boils down to what I say. And if I say that you did the crime, you did the crime. And the judge is going to believe me.
What
You know,
about the plea deals? You know, the plea deals that they
and the plea deals.
Yeah, when you're going into the prison. But I just want to say that we have to look at the profit motive in all of this as well.
Yes,
Keep people in the prisons, you know, this country was founded on cheap labor and slave labor, indentured servitude and slave labor. And so when they put that exception clause in there.
In the 13th Amendment.
Yes. So you can be a slave, and that's what's happening in these prisons as well, you know, not to mention Correction Corporation of America and how they, you know, how they are have stockholders, which means that they have to keep the people in the prisons, you know. So you have to look at the profit motive as well as looking at the labor that is being, you know, because in the prisons they're doing, I remember they talked about Kamala Harris saying she couldn't let the prisoners out in California because who was going to fight the forest fires? So, I mean, a prisoner versus paying a firefighter who is not, you know, a volunteer. So we need to look at how this criminal justice system feeds into the profit motive that.
But we also have to, again, re-examine sentencing disparity, largely because you really focus, you become laser focused on motives and disenfranchisement and injustices. And what I mean by that is that when you have people that are sentenced for 14 years for a street fight, which is something that just I learned of, a simple assault, 14 years for a street fight over on the Eastern Shore. And those people are just sitting there in prison. See, we've got to, again, bring to the forefront these sentencing disparities because when you don't bring the sentencing disparities to the forefront, you don't see the difficulties that lie ahead. For example, there should be a study, and it should be in our face, and we should be identifying it and addressing it. How people who do drugs are largely incarcerated on the minority end, more so than white folks who do drugs. See, that disparity needs to be brought to everybody's attention.
Well, wait a minute.
With statistics.
But I think Mike Tabor, and I don't want to throw your name out there. You're here on the air anyway, but Mike Tabor has said this our last show. White people got to do something. Who are you bringing the statistics to? Not to me. Not to my brother. Not to my sister. We know. We talk about our family members who are locked up. We talk about the people who are getting pulled over. So it's not our families that we need to be talking to. But if you go to a white conversation, you bring this up, it gets dismissed. And that's an issue that we have, not in a collective round. I'm not talking about the few sprinkles here and there. We're talking about the collective. It gets dismissed. And that's an issue for us because they also vote. They also benefit from the profit. They also benefit for us being in prison. They also, and whether they know it or not, that's the issue. Some people may not even know they benefit. And once you describe and tell them, they're like, I did not know that. And they're like, wow. And because why would they think of it? Why would they want to think of it? It doesn't even come across their consciousness until it's taught to them. But they're not going to come ask me either. They're not going to come ask you, Judge Barber. They may ask you, but they're not going to come ask a regular Black person saying, can you tell me about prison reform? It doesn't come up on their dinner table. They're talking about money marketing, investments, college for their kids. They're not talking about prison reform. It's
The
not
bear
even,
market, the bull market.
yeah, they're not
the
even
stock
talking.
market.
It's not even on their radar. So how do we put it on their radar for them to be consciously aware that it needs to be? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think sometimes you have to start by doing something. I mean, there are just so many simple things that we could start doing tomorrow, but we don't do them because it's not comfortable. For instance, Judge Barber, you brought up a Starbucks. I haven't used Starbucks in I don't know how many years. I've been going to them. I'm pretty sure they're not missing my business because they use prison labor. I don't want to you know, pay a company who's then using prison labor. It doesn't make any sense. So if we decide as a group with our allies that we're not going to go to this business until they stop doing certain practices, we could get this done in a week.
But we have
and everything that we talked about in terms of lower sentences, less incarceration, all these kinds of things we could get done in a week because we would have their attention. But when these people are like, that coffee tastes so good, and they go to Victoria's Secrets, oh, isn't that a pretty bra? All these companies that use prison labor, and I think in Maryland they say that they pay people 17 cents an hour to do that. And think about what it would do in terms of employment for people who are not in prison. And think about how many people commit crimes because they're desperate. They can't find a job on the outside. I remember I had a client who was 16 years old and he was like, so what if I go to jail? I get 3 hots and a cot. I was like, oh my God, at 16 years old, he's thinking that his chances are better in jail.
Hots and a cot no more.
Outside.
I was out just doing this election of this new presidency. I don't know if everybody knew, but Chick-fil-A donated to the Trump campaign. Who knew that? Raise your hand.
Oh, yeah, I knew that.
Yeah. Chick-fil-A was a huge donor. So was Home Depot, and there are others, right? I saw a long line on Chick-fil-A, all these black people, right?
Every day.
But hold on. I was so pissed off. I pulled over. I got out and I said, don't you know, now this is a line full of black people at 5 o'clock. I said, don't you know that they donate to Donald Trump's campaign? I don't know, brother, but that chicken's good. This is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with, right? I said,
it's like we're willing to sell each other out for a cup of coffee or for, some chicken. That's basically what we're doing.
The reality is that you have.
It's not they, it's us. If we valued ourselves more, if we valued each other more, we would be willing to not buy chicken from places that have our worst interests when they conduct business.
Yeah, to our special guests, I wanted to know if they have any success stories that they can share with us today.
Well, I was, I thought you was gonna play my video again, but I didn't show.
Oh, do you want me to? I could play it. You want me to play it?
Yeah, because that is a success story, and that would be nice, being that he's asking, because my heart is in the heart of the addict. My heart is in the heart of the prisoner. My heart, because I was the little girl who sold her body. I was the little girl who shot heroin at 13 years old. I was that little girl who, had to find her way and was in and out of prisons all her life, half of her life. I was that little girl that was on probation and on parole. I was that little girl that was addicted to crack cocaine and heroin. And I believe one of the reasons why we talk over people's heads when we should be talking to people. And this is why a lot of drug addicts and prisoners and ex-offenders don't want to hear what we got to say. Because first of all, we have to meet them where they are and bring them where they need to be. And the reason why most of them don't vote, because they destroy because of lack of knowledge, because they don't know what they're voting for. And they
That's
already feel defeated. They already feel defeated. They already feel left out. They are, like the little boy said, he's not going to live to see 25. So they're already in a failure mentality. So people need to know we care. And I was just visualizing a whole group of ex-addicts, ex-offenders just marching, and it's going to take all of us
It's
to
gonna
come
take all of
together.
us, yes.
What's
I
wrong with
think
us
that-
mobilizing ex-offenders to run for office?
And
Run
Can
for
I share?
office.
now you
Like
asked
the
about a
video now?
success story. You asked about a success story, and I want to ask Attorney Pierre if you would play a little bit of that clip. Just
I'd like to
answer
say
the question.
something because before you get. I would like to speak after the video.
Oh, you want to say something quick before the video?
No,
starts or
I'll
after
wait till after the
video?
video.
Oh, okay.
This is the house where my mother raised 7 children. I can remember this is where I was living when I first started using drugs, when I was introduced to crack cocaine. I met this older man who was probably about 20 years older than me, who shot some heroin in my arm. And my life went downhill from that moment on.
Heroin, the street name for heroin, became Mondrea Jacobs' obsession. At 12, she faced the harsh realities of living from one drug fix to the next.
I began to hang out with people whose lifestyle was to drink and to drug and to party and smoke reefer and commit crimes and hang out in all night bars, and I just lived for drugs. I woke up using drugs. I went to bed using drugs. Drugs was my life. I would go in the bathroom in the 7th grade and shoot up in the bathrooms. In my lunch period, I would go and shoot up. I would be smoking marijuana around the back of the school building while everybody else was in the lunchroom having lunch.
Mondrea's mother feared her daughter's addiction would kill her. Out of desperation, she had her own daughter arrested and placed in a children's center. For 2 years, Mondrea remained in the center and was drug-free. When she went back to her old hangouts and old friends, her addiction resurfaced with a vengeance.
I would prostitute and sell my body to get the drugs, steal from people, rob people, selling drugs for drug dealers.
Drugs were slowly destroying Mondrea's life. But at certain moments, Mondrea remembered her grandmother's faith and wondered if there was still hope.
My grandmother instilled the word of God so deep in us. There was a voice that would constantly speak to me and remind me that there was still a little speck of hope for me. I would smoke crack, and while I was smoking it, I would be praying at the same time.
Soon the drive to obtain drugs exacted a deadlier toll. Mondrea never intended to hurt anyone with the gun she carried.
I went into a nightclub with the intention of finding someone to rob to satisfy my drug habit. And I tried to lure a guy out with no intentions of harming him. When I told him to give me his money, he refused, and I wound up shooting him.
Mondrea didn't stay to find out if the man was alive.
My lawyer came back and told me, you're facing 20 years to life. And I got on my knees and I cried out to God like a baby.
When the sentence was delivered, Mondrea and her lawyer were stunned. The judge sentenced Mondrea to serve 1 year in prison and then 2 years probation. While on parole, she was drug-free. But the day her probation ended, she decided to celebrate.
I just knew that there was no way that I could go back and use drugs again. But I did. I used again.
Immediately, the drugs began to take their toll on Mondrea's body.
I was down to 60 pounds. I thought I had AIDS. I really felt like that I was just forsaken by God.
One night, she sold her body for $20. She left to get high, promising the man she would come back. When she didn't return, the man who bought her for $20 came after her with a gun.
I could actually feel when the bullets were coming across my face. And as close as that person was to me, there's no way that those bullets should have missed me.
After that near-death experience, Mondrea knew that her life had to change.
I began to go to church, and I wanted to change. There was something inside of me that kept reminding me that I was better than this, that I was better than a drug addict, and that Jesus really loved me. I gradually stopped using drugs. I got convicted, and my conviction led to a conversion, and it caused me to cry out to God. See, at first I was just calling on God, but I really, really cried out to God after I got shot at. I went from smoking ounces of crack cocaine and got down to $100, $50 worth, $20 worth, $10 worth, $5 worth, until after I kept going to church Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. God just totally took the desire from me.
Today, Mondrea is drug-free.
I do not have temptation for drugs. 21 years clean now, and I just do not have temptation. I have gone into places where they were smoking drugs and drinking to pray for people, and it never bothered me. I just see it as a piece of poison now.
Mondrea now helps the homeless in her city with a nonprofit ministry called Never Say Never.
I love Jesus so much because he first loved me. I love him because I can depend on him when I can't depend on nobody else. My priority now is to win souls for Jesus Christ, to let my light shine so men can see my good works and glorify the Father. Never say never, because God never gives up on us, and he never gave up on me.
Definitely want to get to our last person that had a comment.
I think, Mark, you had a question or a comment?
Sounds like the group is in search of tangible solutions. And I think the solutions are in need of influence and power. And to beget power, we can look at the problem, or look at, for example, Chick-fil-A would be, we could consider that a problem, that they're donating to an organization which follows the pack and incarcerates the masses of African American people. Maybe part of the solution is to coalesce power around organizations that don't have those practices and stand firm against those kind of practices, to build the type of support system of, I want to say, of power. And those organizations are also influential because they are businesses, or they may be individuals, they may be creative artists, musicians who have influence, and they also have a following. And so if you're trying to reach a broad constituency of people, I think you have to recognize the fact that maybe none of us on the call who have these attributes. So we have to begin to bring to the table individuals who understand or can be influenced to understand this problem in a way that they want to become a part of building a solution. And what's the scope? Is the scope, there can be people on this call. This call goes out to who all ever will listen. Are we in scope of the state of Maryland? Are we in the scope of a particular county, in particular jurisdiction, in a particular court system? We can't conquer it all. I often say to people that sometimes we get lost in the journey. And what I mean is, all of you think about a mountain. We all have stories of how we got out of something, whether it was a God solution, which we just heard, which was a beautiful solution, but God was the solution for the story I just heard. But I'm trying to say that there are a infinite number of journeys that each of us individually and many more before us have taken in life, trying to move forward in life, trying to move up in life, trying to reach goals and do better for ourselves in life. We're all climbing, seeking to climb upward. But this is this issue is a pandemic in and of itself, and it's pervasive, like the brother said, throughout the world. But that scope is so large that we have to bring that scope down to something where we can not only begin to have a solution that causes change, but it becomes visible to others near to us. Maybe when I say that, if it's Montgomery County, that then brings about change to Howard County, or it starts in Baltimore County, and other counties begin to coalesce with wanting the same thing for the prison system in their county. So we have to put scope around the solution. We have to clearly identify what problems we want to attack, which ones we have the resources, the power, and the influence, and organize around those things.
Thanks, Mark. And I want to let people know we can continue to stay on the line. I have to close up the show for iHeart and all the podcast channels that we have. You can always catch us on every Wednesday of You Be the Judge here at 6 p.m. You can go to any of your podcast channels, just put in Bridges Live, and the number 139 is the show. And you can always catch it on YouTube, the YouTube channel. We will be staying on the line, but as far as the live broadcast, we will be cutting it off right now. So I want to wish everyone thank you and see everyone next week. As far as your answer,